Good morning, this is Andy with Mountain Computers. It is Monday, March 11th, 2019, and the last couple of days we've been doing videos on different software and different programming stuff and networking, but today I want to talk about project management. This is a big subject and not everybody's good at it. But what I've done is I've printed out some materials here from various other companies and other project managers, and I'm going to fold in my project management experience and education and successes and failures, and I'm going to sort of cover what some other people are talking about when it comes down to project management. I think the most important thing when it comes down to the success of any individual is to be able to handle projects. Be a project leader or a project team member for an organization, for a small company, for a nonprofit, for like even in 4-H or FFA. Those are agricultural programs that kids grow up through. I think all my life I've been working on projects because as farmers we're always not only doing work, but we're always trying to improve that which we're cultivating, growing, raking, baling, taking into the barn. It's not just work, it's planned work. And one of the sayings that I've always said is if you don't have a plan, that's a plan for failure. And if you have a plan and you're able to implement half the plan, that's success. And if you implement all the plan, it's even better. And there's one rule I want to share real quick, and it's called the 95-5 rule, and it has to do with project management. When you have a project that says that is like 100%, let's just say there's a project that you have to do 100% of it. The 95-5 rule says you will spend 95% of your effort to complete the last 5% of the project in order to get project success, closure, and everything. Well, there's a second rule that's the 80-20 rule where 20% of the people do 80% of the work, or the vice versa, the counter of that. But the 95-5 rule is sometimes a project you just have to shut off and close when it's not really done, but everybody is stressed out. And in project management, from experience, you do realize that you will take a select few people from your project team and finish the 5% quietly and finish the project for the stakeholders, while the most of the people on the project team are let go and to continue on doing whatever they're going to do or the next project. Because sometimes people will kill each other to get that 100%. I don't know, it's the old saying is there's A, B, and C students, and how you sit in the classroom, A students, B students, C students, and then the other sort of cliche is all the A students work for the B students. Well, I was a solid B student, so that might explain some things, but I was always continuing to work harder and harder and harder. But without projects where there's a beginning and an ending, like we talked about deltas, from beginning to ending, there's a lot of energy, resources, and time committed. But in the big picture, always be working on a project. So with that introduction, let's just get started. So there's three things when it comes to project management. There is the scope of a project, the width of the project. Then there's the timeline in a project. Then there's the resources in a project. So those three elements is project management 101, okay? So you have the scope, and you always want to avoid scope creep, somebody coming in and always adding to your project. Now if it's the stakeholder or the investor or your boss, that's allowed and sort of tolerated. But if it's a really big project, you probably don't want to do it. If it's a government project, that might happen, but it becomes more expensive for taxpayers. If you're building a construction, like a house, your own house, or a building for a business, and you have a lot of changes at the end, that can become more expensive because of change orders. So the scope you want to control, because scope requires the resources and the amount of time. So scope, time frame, and then your resources. So let's talk about the time frame. The time frame is, and there's two things in the time frame. One of them that's critical to understand is what's called critical path, the path that you take in order to achieve the project. And then there's also something else called fast tracking a project. Fast tracking, critical path says these are the critical things that make the project move. And if we don't meet these milestones in a project, that critical path, the project will fail if the critical path isn't achieved. The other thing is the fast tracking, where people are like in a hurry. Where a normal project, you're just walking along. Okay, we're doing it. You hurry up a little bit and you slow down, or you pause and look around. But fast tracking is really if it takes 2 people to do a project that takes 2 days. Say for instance you want to get it not done in 2 days, but 1 day. So the reasonable thinking is you double the resources. So you have 4 people to get it done in 1 day versus 2 people in 2 days. So fast tracking says if I double the people, I'll get it done in half the time. Now that's just a standard simple rule. That's not necessarily, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes there's critical things like this task has to be finished before you can finish the other task. So if you have 1, 2, 3 tasks, milestone, and one has to be done before the other can start, that's your critical path. Now in order to achieve that, maybe you have to put more resources at one of those paths in order to achieve your critical path and also fast track. So we talked about scope, we talked about time. Oh, in most projects, I realize when I work on projects, they're 3, 6 months, a year, most of them. Anything over a year really needs to be broken down into larger phases because people's focus, let alone their life, gets in the way. Travel, vacations, sick, death, births, marriages, I mean lots of things go on. I mean 18 months, worst case, major project, or a major component that leads to a larger project. So try and keep things. Now, that has nothing to do with master planning. Don't get me wrong. I understand what master planning is about. You have managers that look and leaders that look a month out, those that look 6 months out, a year, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That kind of master planning has nothing to do with project management. But if you try and put, like the movie theaters, they like just did the Marvel phases, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's over, I don't know, 10-year period. So if you take 4 phases divided by, 10 years, that's 2.5 years per phase. And they can sort of slide them into each other in order to make the stories fit. Now that's project management, that's vision, that's mission, that's master planning. And don't get me wrong, this talk about project management, it's not hard, and it needs to be discussed more in nuts and bolts. But so when you talk about the master planning, what's going on, why does this project exist, how does that fold into an organization? Well, that trickle down, trickle up kind of activity. I mean, I've had team members that say, why are we doing this project that has nothing to do with the company? Well, that's because the project manager, the stakeholders, hasn't sold or explained how this project makes the company better. So I always say, what have you done in the last 6 months to make me want to hire you? That usually involves a project. What programming project have you worked on? What are you working on now that's not confidential, something you can talk about? Tell me about it. So for project management, my experience goes back to my Army days. So I'll sort of wait till the end to explain my history and go through time very quickly and tell you about some of the things that I experienced in both good and bad ways. So project management. So resources. All right, so the 3 things: scope, time, resources. All this stuff, resources. So resources. This is an interesting one. So let me use the 6 M's. That's sort of like a metric that we use. The 6 M's in an organization when it comes down to, well, let's just say fishbone diagram, where you have root cause analysis. In project management, you can actually use the 6 M's to talk about your resources, because in the 6 M's, you have the 4 M's that are really simple to, that's what it used to be, is 4 M's, then it became 6. Man, machine, materials, methods. Man, machines, materials, methods. Man's easy, that's human beings. Man, materials, that's raw materials. Machines, that's capital. And methods, that's your processes. And then 2 more came onto the scene. These 2 other ones was management, which has a huge impact on projects, and metrics. How do you measure it? So those 6 M's applied to project management, that'll help you sort of lay out the entire strategy and your tactics to attack a project. Now let me share with you something. This is a project manual that I got when I was, it was like a, was it a 1 week or a 2 week course that Microsoft sent us to when we became managers. And it was, I think it was put on and based by some Xerox project management. And Xerox, of course, you know, other than the larger, older companies, they have really good project management stuff. But this one is called Managing Projects in Your Organization, and then they added at Microsoft. So the tabs on this, there's only 9 tabs on it. So this entire booklet was synthesized down into myself and one other person. His name's Ed. And we synthesized this project flowchart. Now, if you can see this, I'll just show it to you. See that? Okay. You can hold the video there. That's broken down into three different blocks. So, I'll read the blocks to you. So, project idea is conceived, project idea is documented, and then project's approved for research. And at the end of this step right here, you have stakeholder approval to move to the next level. Begin project research, end project research conclusion reviewed for approval, then another stakeholder checkmark. Then if that is approved, well, at any point these are denied, the project stops. After the second phase, you go into project approved, project implemented, project completed. Now, this is basically how you take an idea or an invention to market. You have these phases, you have these approvals and checkoffs, and that's it. So as an inventor, inventors are up here in one spot. That's the project idea conceived. That's the epiphany. That's the idea. You do some research and you do some development, prototyping, but an inventor, pretty much at that point, their invention gets bought because it's great, patented or whatever, and then it's handed off to an organization or some sort of, I don't know, company or investors, angels or whatever. Then they say, hey, let's take this to market. But they go through the same process. We'll go through our A funding, B funding, C funding, etc. At some point in time, if something isn't right when it comes to a project, they'll stop it, they'll halt it, they may change the team members, they may change the captain, they may change the entire location that the project is being developed. In my master's degree, in my emphasis, the extra 15 credits, we talked about international technology development management, whether or not you insource or outsource, in-country, out-of-country. I mean, that's a huge project management task in itself. So yeah, the inventor starts here, and then they're no longer involved. Now, if an inventor is, I'd say crazy, they'll stay with the project all the way to the end, rather than going on to the next idea to invent. Great inventors, they don't get involved in the mechanics, or let alone the metrics, the details and stuff like that. They just have this great invention, and that's all they do is come up with great ideas, and somebody else takes them to market. Down here, There's a documentation phase Microsoft used to use really big on documentation, so the documenters get involved early in the process. Not only is it important for risk management, it's important for legal, it's important for training, it's important for a lot of things. But up in here, your team's pretty small. As you get to the end, the last part here, project is delivered, released to the public. Then you go into what's called the post-mortem. You look back at the project and you say, what could we have done better for the next time we have to do something like this? So this flowchart's pretty cool. There's variations of it. That's a good one. Now, this piece of paper here is about 10 rules of highly successful project management. Who's this by? Doesn't say. Oh, some lady named Lisa. 1, be agile. 2, don't micromanage. 3, keep improving your project management practice. Ongoing plan. Work with a sense of urgency. Visualize and communicate all your deliverables. Complete deliverables step by step. Healthy risk management. Open communication. And number 10, never lose sight of the 3 factors, which is your time, your budget, and your quality. This number 10 doesn't make sense, but let's go through these. Be agile. Okay. Project managers have to be very strategic in their head. They also have to be very good on paper to some degree, but they also have to be very good with people. I've known project managers that just plow through people and plow through organizations because all they see is the project and the end result. They don't see the people involved. And they don't care about the people at the end of the project. All they care about is the project being done. They don't care if half the people died and then people like me have to come through and resuscitate them. There's a balance. To be agile means you sort of have to do a little of both at the same time. I mean, you have to be the leader and the follower at the same time. You have to put yourself in their shoes in order to bring them along. Conflict resolution in projects is not about being right. It's about keeping the team together. Now, if you have a team member that is just being difficult, pull them aside. See if that's the right thing for them. Get them off the project. Don't micromanage. I'm a walk-around manager. Okay, I'm not a peer manager where I'm an armchair manager. It's like your generals, armchair generals or actual generals that are in the field. The most successful leaders are the ones who are walk-around people, but also task. They know what they're talking about. It's not because they've done it all. There's a certain relevancy to leaders that know what they're talking about because they've done it before. And those leaders that don't know what they're talking about, they just say, well, this is the way I learned it in college, or my Ivy League degree gave me this epiphany, or my parents. I mean, your parents are a great source of wisdom. But if you haven't walked the walk, their walk, you can talk it, but the nuances over time change a little bit. So don't micromanage. I think you do a little bit. You have checkpoints. One thing that's always important is to follow up and review assignments. So if a task needs to be done in a project, and it takes about 2 days, make sure halfway through you're at least hearing from them. You're walking over in the project and seeing whether or not progress is being made. And you want an open door policy to where project management people say, you get somebody to come in and say, man, something's not working. I'd rather know early than late if something's not going to be there on time. My dad always said, let me know before it gets too late to where I can't help. Project managers are the same rule. You need to know in advance and follow your instincts. If it's a huge project, $20 million, $50 million project, you darn well better be on top of it. And if you're the project leader, the senior program manager, or the director, or whatever, delegate, but don't let other people risk your success, nor risk the company or the organization or the financial stability of the company. So do micromanage to a degree. Keep improving your project management practice. Well, if you haven't worked on a project in a long time, you'll probably be a little rusty. The terms, the acronyms may have changed. They may be the same. But the thing that hasn't changed is psychology and humans, getting things done. I was working on this project management sort of like guide over the past 20 years. And I've trained so many people on project management, both formally and informally, wrote my own manuals and stuff, and those 3 things, when it comes to scope, time, and resources, that never changes. Any industry, it's all the same. But there's this new acronym called Earned Value Management. Earned Value Management is Came out of the Air Force, I believe. It's an interesting way to equate metrics and measurement to your activities. And the way you take the workflow and then sort of like your resource flow, your task flow, and you combine it and you do this cross-metric thing. It's pretty interesting. I'll get back to that. Ongoing planning. You start with a plan. You might have to change it. Planning needs to be somewhat detailed, but not overly detailed. There was a person I worked with at Microsoft that spent 3 months to get a project, actually a business plan done, and it was 2 months too long, and it was totally a waste of company resources, 10 people to be exact. I knew it, but it's my boss's boss. Can't do anything about that. I knew it was wrong. I'd been at the company just as long as that person had been, but the person in between didn't. And it doesn't matter. I just knew it was a waste of money, and I knew it was going to fail, but I couldn't do anything about it, and I couldn't get out of the group fast enough. But unfortunately, I ended up just retiring. But I did know one thing. I worked on the number one projects that were and I put myself in charge of those. But when you see failure in a project, you can't cry wolf. But as a stockholder, an investor, an employee, you got to find your way to get to the right person or explain and say, I don't think this is going to work. And maybe you just don't need to be on the project. Maybe that's what I should have done. But at that point, I was pretty much on my way out, and that person did whatever they did. But anyhow, that's another story. Work with a sense of urgency. Yes. If your project is going to take a year and you have to do it 4 hours a day for that year, make sure you can't catch up at the end. You have to, just like working out, it's a regular thing. So plan with a sense of urgency. Be driven towards your completion. Okay, take that with a grain of salt. Don't kill yourself in order to get to the end. I'm older, wiser. I do know people that are younger, half the age. They're always in a hurry. It's like you're in a hurry to die, get a heart attack, have a stroke. Some of my friends that I've seen do that, they've crashed and burned. One of the things about my field of study when it comes to project management is a friend of mine in college, a teacher actually. I mentioned his name in another video. His name's Randy. He was teaching software programming, but he talked for a couple days in our entire term about career planning in our field. And so software programmers, they start, burn out, get paid really high. So this curve here is, and then die, okay? It goes up fast, plateaus, dies. Double E's, slow and long. So your pay and your longevity is long, but it's slow. Computer system engineers, we're sort of the combination of both. We're right through the middle. We end up mostly being managers, if the cards are right. But we don't burn out. We have some of us get into a management track, don't stay in staff, get into a management track where you get a bump in pay, bonuses, salary, stock, everything. Do that earlier than later, say 18 months into a company. Get in, do your job, understand the politics and the drama, the seniority stuff, make a move, and if HR doesn't allow you, make a deal with HR. Say either I walk or you promote me and move me to a new division. That's what I did at Microsoft. After 18 months, the projects I was working on weren't going anywhere. Only one thing. And, abusing high performers, that's one of my quotes in one of my books. Don't do that. Risk versus reward. The reward has to exceed the risk. Project Management 101. And number 2, only work on number 1 projects if you really want to get ahead. And be a team player, but stand your ground. If you know you're a winner, be a winner. And if somebody doesn't see you as a winner, that's their loss. You can be shut down in project management by having a bad project manager or a bad manager or director or whatever. And that's bad. You're wasting your life following this person who isn't going to take you anywhere. If you're on a project that you don't want to be on, and they say you got to be on it, rethink your planning. So, visualize and communicate all project deliverables. With experience, you'll get that. Complete deliverables step by step. Duh. This isn't checkers. You got to do things in order, and you have to do it to where people, it makes sense, the whole team. I mean, if you have a team of 5 direct reports or 2 direct reports, and they have reports, and they have reports, and everybody does it, you have a reporting structure, you have a bulleted list structure, you have a monthly report, a weekly report, a progress report, a financial report, accounting reports. I mean, it's all crazy. Health risk management. I just talked about that in the beginning. If you feel there's an issue or something's going to happen, somebody's about ready to die, sooner than later is best advised. Open communication, open door policy. Never lose sight of the 3 factors: time, budget, and quality. I don't understand the quality thing. Quality is built in. It should be. It's not something you get to the end and say, was it a good product? As you're going along, you will trim off things in your project that you realized at the beginning you thought were good, or don't take them off completely. Just take them out of the deliverable and maybe bring them back in later. So there's some tricks that you have to understand in project management. Don't kill yourself on something. Hand it to somebody else. Maybe you just don't see the solution or the task, how it needs to be looked at and done. Even though that may be in your wheelhouse, maybe you're just having a bad month. I mean, writers have blocks. So just change your angle. Put it down for a while. Sit back, relax. But report what's going on in you, because it could be just human. Being human is normal in projects. Okay. This next guy, rules of lean project management. He only had 2 things: the project team and project stakeholders. Okay. Project team. How do you compose the team? I've been told before that we will go through a project team survey, sort of like look around the room and say who wants to be on the project. Sometimes you have to nudge people, if you're a manager, into a project. Now, I always demand that everybody on my team is going to be on a project, no matter what. Nobody just gets to maintain and sustain. We're doing that half the day anyhow. So while you're working on a project. Some days you'll be full-time working, and then you'll have 1 hour to do a project or 1 hour to do research. There is something about doing research, independent research and study, that an employer should give to their employees that says, 1 hour per day, I'm going to let you do what you think, do what you want to do. It sort of blends into the company, but it's your own independent research time. But you have to tell me what it is to see whether or not I'm going to justify it in case resources come to bear. And it goes into your review. Sure, yeah. Andy's doing X, but he's doing some independent research on Y because that allows him to be creative in something he wants to do. But it's measurable, it's tangible, it goes in the reviews, and it may go into something in the future. That's cool. Projects. Project stakeholders. Okay, these are the people who control who gets paid for doing what. Investors, who makes payroll, who buys capital equipment, whose name is on the line for financing, whose name is on the line for the stake of the company. Don't underestimate how smart these stakeholders are. Not only do they want to make money and be successful, not only for this project, but you have no idea when you're on a project team or a project leader, all the other things they're involved in, or the dynamics, or the legal stuff that they're already dealing with. So, I mean, think about some of our big leaders. They're not just doing one thing, they're doing like probably 20 things, and we only see just the surface, what we see of them. Now, we talk about government agencies. You think about these projects, these massive projects. I just wish the project timeline was public, to where you could see, okay, this street's going to be torn up next week, and then we're going to put some poles up, and that's going to affect your power, your sewer, all these things. The impact to the customer, the impact to the internal teams. I've seen them pave this road out here, and then a week later cut it up. Why didn't the city of Reno talk to each other and say, you just finished paving it and you striped it, and then a week later you cut lines into it to do something with wiring, and then you gotta wait 5 years to come back around and fix that? I went down and told the city of Reno that one time. I said, you guys need to talk to each other. you need to know what other people are doing, so you just don't waste your resources and time. So, oh, well.